I'm going to invite us to shift our attention now to the maternal health sermon guide entitled Wrapped in God's Embrace, Maternal Health Flourishing and Building Communities of Care. Now, we recommend using this particular sermon guide in the month of May, which I think we've all experienced this to some degree or another. Every time Mother's Day starts coming around, so just after Easter, I start seeing all kinds of cards and signs and social media posts celebrating the super moms in our life. They say things like, Mom, not all heroes wear capes, or who needs superheroes when you have mom? And then a couple years ago, in the midst of all the praise for the heroic work of mothers, I saw a meme going around on social media, and it says this: They say it takes a village to raise a child, but no one ever tells you where it is or how to get there. In that moment, was so struck by the honesty in that statement. Moms don't need capes, they need villages. With this in mind, Wrapped in God's Embrace is a 4-week sermon series that invites congregations to reflect on the vocation of motherhood and the role that the church plays in tending mothers and their children. Each week features a different encounter with a mother from the Bible. So in week 1, we hear Mary's birth story in the Gospel of Luke, which gives us an important lens on postpartum health and support for new mothers. Week 2 features the Canaanite woman in Matthew 15. And the Canaanite woman is such a role model for advocacy. She shows us the kind of advocacy work that mothers play as they work for the well-being of their families. In week 3, we meet the widow of Zarephath, and we look at how she forms a community of care with her son and the prophet Elijah in the midst of hardship and crisis. And then finally, in week 4, we return to Mary, who is now the mother of the adult Jesus. Bringing together 2 short episodes from Mark 3 and John 19, we look at how Mary's relationship with Jesus shows the fruit of secure attachment in early childhood, which leads us to consider how the church can participate in cultivating the conditions that mothers and parents need to create secure attachments with their children. And while this guide can be used anytime in the Christian year, as we've talked about, I did also want to highlight that one of the reasons we recommend it being used in May is not just that Mother's Day is the second Sunday of May, but because Mother's Day is also the first day of National Women's Health Week, a nationwide initiative to encourage women of all ages to prioritize their health. So it's a time when we can really live into the rhythms in our society, we can live into the rhythms of the church here, and we can live into the rhythms of annual public health initiatives that are trying to also help women and mothers get the health care that they need. Unlike other resources you may have encountered through the years on biblical motherhood, this guide does not attempt to identify what makes a good mother. Rather, by highlighting the vocation and work of motherhood as it shows up in these 3 biblical mothers, Wrapped in God's Embrace focuses on how God's people are called to support, advocate for, and promote maternal health. And we talk about maternal health in this sermon guide as all issues related to the well-being of persons who give birth and or take on the labor of motherhood in the lives of children. As a result, the guide approaches motherhood with the widest possible lens that includes all avenues and expressions of motherhood, including people who do not have their own children, but who invest in the lives of children and offer children a safe, nurturing space to grow and learn. As you engage with this sermon guide, it is especially helpful to note that an underlying current that runs through the guide is this idea of secure attachment. In the final week, Mary's interactions with the adult Jesus testify to what experts in child and family psychology today call secure attachment. And attachment itself really just indicates any kind of relationship between two human beings. When a child is parented by someone with a secure attachment style, what they receive from that parent is a sense of internal worthiness and an expectation that others will generally accept them for who they are. Yet so many mothers who enter motherhood not only don't know their own attachment style, but they also are not necessarily aware of the attachment style that they received from their own parents, or how that attachment style impacted their own development. So mothers, this is a place where mothers really need the help of the community to develop a secure attachment with their children, because that secure attachment is good for the mother's health as well. While training in attachment styles is good and helpful, and there are many resources that you can be connected with to be part of that, mothers also need what we're calling communities of care that help with the day-to-day stresses of motherhood, so that they have this opportunity to securely attach with their children. And though that attachment and secure attachment are not named until week 4, I want you to imagine and think with secure attachment as you look at and engage the content in weeks 1 through 3. Because when we help churches imagine how to build communities of care that mothers need, we are ultimately empowering and tending mothers' ability to create secure attachment and bring their best to the vocation of motherhood. So with that introduction, I am so pleased to welcome the Reverend Shelley Petts. I will let her introduce herself further, but I am just so excited that she is here to share her perspectives on the material enwrapped in God's embrace and to give us even more perspective on it. So Shelley, I'm going to turn it over to you.
Great. Thank you so much, Lisa. As she said, my name is Shelley Petts, and I am an elder here in the Great Plains Conference, and I work as a consultant in the area of clergy, faith, and wellness. I am really excited to be able to be here today to speak on my reflections about this maternal health sermon series guide. When I was first asked to review this sermon series, I had several questions as to what this would be. As there have been sermons over the years within our conference and beyond regarding mothers, and I think some have been very helpful and some have been harmful. Some have caused some damage. I have also talked with several clergy about their own difficulty regarding preaching on Mother's Day with the multitude of views that are present in congregations. What I found in this resource was a very helpful look, surrounded by grace and care, and that had wonderful reflections of numbers and statistics to help me understand and flesh out some of what was being talked about. I appreciate all of this very much, and I am grateful for the way that motherhood in all of its facets was addressed. Lisa spoke to this already, and it really is looked at from a variety of avenues. I'm grateful that it's offered for people who are mothers and for those who are not. I'm grateful that it acknowledges the pain that can come in thinking about mothers, our own, ourselves, others, and the challenges that mothers face. I also recognize that this might be a sermon series that is never preached in some of our congregations because of a variety of reasons, because of its sensitive nature, because of sexism that pops up in different areas and congregations, because talking about some of the things that are brought up here can be difficult, and that's okay. This series gives permission to explore motherhood in a variety of ways and resources to do this well. The sermon guide gives voice and shape to experiences of mothers and the need for greater maternal health. I am a mother of a preteen and a teenager, and I'm living witness to the importance of maternal health from early on through all ages and stages of life, and that can morph and change and is equally important throughout a lifespan. As the church, there are so many things that we can make happen right now that would benefit the lives of mothers and their families. If you do choose to enter into this sermon series, either as a sermon series or a Bible study or whatever way that works for you, I invite you to consider sharing testimonies or stories from your context from ministry. Maybe written or oral or video testimonies could be a powerful way to exploring mental health from a variety of angles from within the places that you're serving. I believe that this guide could be a terrific launching pad for discussions, and I'm so grateful it's been put together. There are many resources that are included even beyond the sermon series itself that I just want to highlight. One in particular that I think is great for this particular one is a United Methodist resource that could be considered as an additional conversation partner. One is the resolution that was adopted in 2012 regarding maternal health and the church's role. And there's a link in the guide for that. Another one is simply some language that's found in our Book of Discipline in our 2016 regarding the care of healthcare and for the social community that's found in the social principles. And so I love that there's just additional resources that you can use it as is, but if you ever want to do some deeper dives with whatever you're doing, those are included as well. Congregations and communities coming together to address challenges is very intriguing to me. And I think this sermon series weaves it together very well. I believe exploring this together, we can be at the forefront of looking at the wide scope of generational health, which includes maternal health throughout the lifespan of people. Exploring how congregations can cultivate these secure attachments that Lisa was talking about between mothers and children could be seeds that are planted now that have long-lasting effects that we can never even yet imagine. The guide states this: mothers face mental and physical health issues that can impact their overall health and quality of life. Healthy mothers are important to building healthy families. Infrastructure, supports, and communities of care for mothers is necessary for all to have the best start in life. And we can be a part of that as the church who cares for those around us. Preaching this series may not be for you. If it is, that's great. But if it isn't, I want you to consider maybe even encountering some of the importance of maternal health in some way. For example, maybe doing one of the exercises that's in the resource guide, just as a way to yourself see how does this fit with me? What is it settling with me? In week 2, there's a suggestion of engaging in a daily breath prayer exercise to cultivate a willingness to listen compassionately to the hardships and the concerns of mothers in your community. And so I invite us to just take a moment to try this together. We've been doing some breathing throughout the day, and through this, I'm just going to go through this twice. I'm going to just invite you to breathe in, and then I will share a statement, and then I will invite you to breathe out and to hear this statement. We'll go through this twice just to see what it could look like to explore this for you as clergy. I invite you to breathe in and hear these words. As the Canaanite mother had faith to speak, breathe out. God, grant me the faith to listen. Breathe in. As the Canaanite mother had faith to speak, God, grant me the faith to listen. Or maybe sometime in your journey of reflecting on maternal health, you might want to do one of the free writes, as we've been doing today, to look at some of the questions of what is a time that I experienced care from my community? And how did I feel receiving that care? Or what are ways that I could give that care to others, maybe mothers in my community? Or maybe we could reflect on exploring our response to a mother who may be experiencing depression. And what would that look like? Someone that you may know who is deep in the throes of depression and doesn't know where to turn? What could you do as clergy? If any of the language is difficult for you or unfamiliar, maybe you want to seek out a mentor or a colleague or someone who's on this call to run things by. The beauty of these sermon guides is that they are just that, they're guides. You can use them as they are or use them as a starting point for what makes sense for your context for ministry. I'm so grateful for your work and for the care that you are doing and tending to these important areas of conversation. Sometimes they can be hard to jump into, but I thank you for your faithfulness and for the ways that God is working through you. Lisa, I'll turn it back over to you. Thank you so much.
Shelley, thank you so much for sharing your perspectives and bringing those things out. I so appreciate what you've drawn forth and helped us think with. Before we move into our free writing practice, I want to open it up. Are there any questions for me or for Shelley around this sermon guide? Okay, if there aren't any questions, I'm going to release us into our free writing practice again. Again, reflecting on with your piece of paper or your Word document, what have you heard that could be important for your congregation to hear? Okay, according to my timer, that was about 10 minutes. So I want to invite us all back. And before we transition, we're about to transition into a break. So you get a chance to stand up from your computer or lay your head on your desk, whatever you need to kind of reorient from the Zoom fatigue that we all feel at different times. But I do want to take just a moment to highlight, Bonnie has asked an excellent question in the chat. And Shelley, if you have any ideas about this, I'd love for you to chime in as well. You will find in the toolkit aspect of the sermon guide a lot of nationwide and Kansas specific resources that are not just public health messaging, but are also kind of different local and national organizations working with mothers. I will say that I'm not sure that I can speak to a specific resource or single entity that covers all of the things that you've brought forward, Bonnie, which are fantastic. However, I do think the sermon guide offers a lot of opportunities to start looking for those, and also we always encouraging you to reach out to in this case, the maternal health professionals in your community to find out what's happening locally where you are, because that's really where we can make the most difference in many cases. So I want to encourage you to do that, but also take a look at that toolkit and see if any of that in the maternal health sermon guide is would help you find what you're looking for. Do you have any thoughts on this, Shelley?
I think what you said is excellent in terms of the local providers are fantastic. Another piece, it's not specific to some of the maternal health, but they do a lot of work on all kinds of areas of depression and difficulties. Is NAMI, the National Alliance of Mental Illness. There's one in Kansas and there's one in Nebraska. And so they're specific to each of those states. And I have worked with them on a number of items, and sometimes they can work with specific things, such as a particular mother having one of these difficulties that they can go from that angle is one possibility that I would suggest as well. But in terms of the thank you for putting that. Yes. So and then they have one for each state. Their particular connections are wonderful, and they're hands-on in your areas and in the field work that I would just lift up as well. And depending upon where you're located, sometimes the hospital themselves might have uh, either social workers or psychologists that can do some connecting as well, but or your local organizations. But those are just some things off the top of my head that people have worked with who are going through some of the issues that you have lifted up that is so important, so that they know that they are not alone. And even just finding, what I have found is that sometimes if we can pick any one of those that you have named, but if there's even one person who knows that someone else has gone through afterbirth blues, if they can be hooked up with one person to know that there's a place where they can talk to, they can ask questions, they can know that they have a safety net. We've done a lot of connecting people one-on-one. Sometimes if you bring this topic up, it can even open up avenues that people may share with you. Hey, I have one of these issues. If someone that you know as a clergy member is going through that, I'd be happy to talk with them. So sometimes even just those web of connections in communities can really make a difference that I have seen as well.
Thank you for that, Shelley. I appreciate that. And Bonnie or others, if you have further questions, you absolutely put it in the chat, but also there are ways to connect with us outside of this Zoom as well. And I hope that all of those are helpful. I will name, NAMI is so excellent because one of the things that they can really do is help provide a variety of kinds of support groups and things, some on Zoom, some on in person, that really help us overcome the stigma around some of these mental health issues, like postpartum depression and post-baby blues and those kinds of things. So thank you for that question.